"This is where my parents live," Ethan suddenly declared upon his visit. Behind him, his in-laws nodded happily. I was in the middle of an online meeting and quickly apologized to the other party before ending the call. I had even informed them about a meeting at 1 p.m. Irritated, I turned my gaze toward the door. "Why did you come all of a sudden?" I asked, maintaining my composure. My father-in-law proudly replied, "We'll pay off the mortgage, so please leave." It was hard to suppress a laugh at his statement. My mother-in-law had never worked, and my father-in-law was just staying at home without any employment. Yet Ethan was completely in favor of his parents' opinion. Disappointed by his stance, I considered divorce. "Then I'll leave," I quickly replied, to the surprise of all three of them. "The mortgage of the house is $5,000 per month." With an inward smile, I began to pack seriously. Luckily, I had a business trip scheduled for a week, starting the next day. With my suitcase and bank book ready, I headed to the entrance. "Goodbye, then," I said as I left the house. First, I'd start by transferring the house's title to Ethan. I felt excited thinking about my plans. "My name is Shelley Owen. I am 47 years old and work as a web designer. I went independent 5 years ago and have been fortunate enough to receive many project checks. As a result, I've earned more than 5 times my previous salary and now live on the top floor of a high-rise condo. I met Ethan, my husband, 3 years ago through Ashley, my former boss. He is Ashley's cousin. He's kind and honest, but had trouble maintaining relationships, so he had been single for a long time. Around that time, my business was doing well, and I bought the top floor of a high-rise condo, doubling as an office. I wasn't planning on marrying, but Ashley strongly suggested I meet Ethan. When I met him, he was very gentle and attractive, looking much younger than his actual age. He listened to me talk about my job and complimented me a lot, which drew me to him quickly. We started dating and got engaged within 6 months. My parents had already passed away, and my only relative was my brother. So my brother and his wife also attended the family meeting. From Ethan's side, his parents and cousin Ashley came. The meeting went smoothly overall. However, my sister-in-law's comment, "This seems stiff," left me puzzled. I never imagined her words would become reality. After marrying, Ethan moved into my house, and we started our life together. His workplace was harsh, requiring him to leave early in the morning and return home past midnight. Despite this, his salary was only a quarter of mine. One day I suggested to Ethan, who was exhausted and went to sleep immediately every day, "It's bad for your health. Why don't you look for another job?" However, he reprimanded me with a face full of anger. "Are you saying I should quit my job? Are you looking down on me because I earn less?" I was surprised by Ethan's strong reaction, as we had never argued before. Feeling uncomfortable about unintentionally disrespecting his job, I decided to apologize sincerely. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean it that way. I'm just worried about your health." He softened. "My apologies too. I overreacted. You've always taken care of the house, and I shouldn't have scolded you." Ethan quickly calmed down, and our first argument ended swiftly. However, it became difficult to suggest a job change afterward. Ethan's return time got even later, and he eventually spent half the week at the office. While I was concerned about his health, he seemed to enjoy his job, so I decided to support him as much as I could by creating a relaxing environment whenever he returned home. "Hey, about my dad's medical expenses, could we increase the remittance a bit?" Ethan suggested this when his father was in the hospital with back pain. Sighing inwardly at his request in his father's hospital room, I didn't hesitate to help my in-laws, as I had no parents of my own. Our household depended on my income, with Ethan contributing a part of his salary to his parents. His salary wasn't low for a man in his 40s, but the exact amount he kept for himself was unclear. However, it was evident he was providing enough for his parents not to struggle. I couldn't agree when he insisted on increasing the remittance because it was, in the first place, possible only due to my income. Yet it was hard to refuse in front of his parents. "Ethan, you're kind. Thank you so much. It's a big help," they said, looking at both of us. Under their pressure, I reluctantly agreed to increase the remittance. Afterward, my in-laws started demanding money for various reasons, not just the remittance. I wanted to refuse, but they knew I would say no, so they approached Ethan instead. Especially weak to his mother's requests, Ethan often decided to increase the remittance whenever she asked. On the day his father returned from the hospital, after sending my in-laws off in a taxi, Ethan and I returned home, only to find, surprisingly, that his parents, who were supposed to have gone home, were waiting outside our house. "It's tough for Dad to climb our stairs, so I thought we'd take care of him here until his back is fully healed," Ethan said. "What? You can't just spring that on me." My surprised reaction made my mother-in-law frown. My father-in-law stood in front of the door as if to say, "Let us in quickly." "Ethan, that's okay, right?" "Of course, don't worry," Ethan replied. I stared at him in shock. He avoided my gaze. From his reaction, I realized that Ethan and his parents had already discussed this. "Fine, you can stay here until you're fully recovered," I said reluctantly and invited my in-laws inside. They looked around the house and sat on the living room sofa. "Look, they live in such a nice house. Our house is 50 years old and falling apart, right, Dad?" "Yeah, it's run down. Getting old is tough." My in-laws conversed, and Ethan just nodded. It seemed they planned to stay here for a long time. To be honest, since I was sending them a substantial amount of money every time. Living together might be less of a financial burden. However, that's not enough reason to accept living together. Renovating old houses is trendy these days. "How about doing that, Ethan?" I suggested. "Yeah, maybe," Ethan replied. 2 years into our marriage, though it's supposedly still in the honeymoon phase, we hardly spend time together. We haven't even gone on a honeymoon, and this place was my home and office. It's fine when Ethan is out for work, but my in-laws would be here all day. With them around, meetings in the living room become difficult. If we were to live together, I'd prefer moving into my in-laws' house and using this place solely as an office. Thanks to my initial resistance, the in-laws didn't bring up living together again. However, even months after my father-in-law's discharge from the hospital, my mother-in-law showed no intention of taking him back, only returning to their home to clean. Moreover, their belongings started overflowing from the guest room into the living room. "Ethan, your dad seems perfectly healthy now. He even went bowling today. Maybe it's time for them to go home," I said, sensing Ethan's discomfort. "What are you saying?" Ethan raised his voice, and I fell silent. Seeing my reaction, Ethan seemed to think that raising his voice would make me comply. He frequently insisted loudly on his opinions, though I didn't always comply. Opposing him led to my mother-in-law siding with Ethan, putting me at a 3-to-1 disadvantage. This went on for 2 years. During this time, I took care of all the housework, while my in-laws often went out to enjoy themselves. Despite his back being fully healed, my father-in-law showed no signs of returning home. "Sorry, I have a meeting at 1:00 p.m. today, so I'll eat lunch in my room, okay? But leave the dishes for later," my mother-in-law replied without looking up as I put lunch on the table. Ethan had taken the day off and was planning to go out with my in-laws in the afternoon. He wouldn't take time off for our anniversary, but would do so on his parents' requests. Thinking this, I responded, understood, and headed to my office. Right at 1:00 p.m., my online meeting started, but about 10 minutes in, footsteps approached, and the door burst open. "This is where me and my parents live," Ethan declared, barging into the room with my in-laws nodding behind him. I hastily apologized to the meeting participants and ended the call. "I told you I had a meeting at 1 p.m., I complained internally while heading towards the door. "Why are you doing this all of a sudden?" I asked calmly, only for my father-in-law to smugly say, "We'll pay the mortgage so you can leave." I struggled to suppress my laughter at his words. My mother-in-law had never worked, and my father-in-law stayed at home without working, yet Ethan completely supported them. Deciding on divorce, I simply said, "All right, I'll leave," surprising all three of them. The mortgage of the house is $5,000 per month. Smiling inwardly, I started packing with a serious expression. Luckily, I had a week-long business trip starting the next day. With my prepared suitcases and bank book, I headed for the entrance. "Goodbye, then," I said before leaving my home. The first thing to do was to transfer the house title to Ethan. Feeling excited about the next steps, I checked into a hotel and immediately contacted a real estate agent to transfer the house to Ethan, including the mortgage. The transfer depended on Ethan's ability to pay the mortgage. If he couldn't, he'd have to make a lump sum payment or sell the house. I accepted this and asked the agent to find me a new home and office. My work could be done from anywhere with a computer, but I needed an office for calm discussions with clients. The agent found a suitable place about 40 minutes' drive from my previous place. It was well equipped with excellent security. I viewed it and decided to buy it immediately after returning from a trip. It was a luxurious apartment, almost like a villa. It felt a bit too luxurious, but I considered it a reward for my efforts and decided to buy it. I could move in within a week, so I stayed in temporary accommodation until then. After all the necessary documents were ready, I left the packing and moving process to a moving company. Ethan hadn't been informed about the mortgage transfer. During the move, my in-laws and Ethan helped while speaking ill of me. When the movers finished, one commented, "You have a difficult family," making me blush with embarrassment. A week later, after settling into my new home, I received a call from Ethan. "What's this about changing the mortgage?" he asked anxiously, with his father shouting in the background. It seemed that Ethan finally understood the situation about the mortgage. "But we're getting a divorce, right? It's unfair for me to pay the mortgage if you're the ones living there," Ethan exclaimed. However, I couldn't agree with him. If he intended to act like they never told me to leave the house, I pressed a play button on the nearby computer, and our conversation from that day started playing. "Why did you record this?" Ethan was startled. "I was in a web meeting, so I recorded it for documentation," I explained. "I usually use an IC recorder for meetings and share the recorded audio after getting consent from the other party." I had mentioned this to Ethan before, but he seemed to have forgotten. "Really? Is that true?" Ethan sounded flustered over the phone. "So good luck with the mortgage repayments, but first, you'll have to pass the credit check," I said. "How much is the mortgage anyway? Can I afford it on my salary?" Ethan asked, which made me laugh. I had informed him about the monthly mortgage amount when we got married, and I showed him all the documents, but it seemed he never paid attention, thinking I would end up paying. "Let's see if you can. The mortgage is $5,000 a month. Did you hear that?" Upon hearing the mortgage amount, Ethan was speechless on the other end of the phone. I could hear his mother asking Ethan, "How much is it?" Ethan was too shocked to answer her question. Then his mother took the phone, and I had a new conversation partner. "Where are you? The mortgage can't be that much." She sounded irritated and started to tell me how incompetent I was as a wife. She insisted that I should pay the mortgage because I had caused them trouble. After finishing her rant with a triumphant tone, she said, "Don't think you can come back for Ethan's salary. We won't help you anymore." It seemed Ethan hadn't told his parents about his actual salary. A son who sends us so much money every month can't be struggling financially. He'll keep taking care of us, so we have no worries, his mother confidently continued. I couldn't help but burst into laughter while listening to his mother boasting. My sudden laughter angered her. I decided to give her a dose of reality. $4,000, I said. "What? The mortgage?" "No, that's Ethan's monthly salary." "What? Really?" She was shocked by my words and seemed frozen for a while. But then she started laughing. That's impossible. Ethan has been sending us $4,000 every month. If his salary was $4,000, he would have been sending us all of it. Stop lying, she yelled, not believing me. I calmly pointed her to the evidence. Look at the shelf right by the entrance of the living room. You'll find Ethan's salary slips there. If you doubt it, check for yourself. You're just lying, she said and headed to the indicated shelf. I could hear Ethan trying to stop her in the background. Soon her voice of surprise came through the phone. What? There's not even $4,000 here. Ethan, what's the meaning of this? Since the beginning of our marriage, I've been tormented by my snide mother-in-law and father-in-law. To make matters worse, they've constantly berated me for not being able to have children. To add insult to injury, even my husband, who was supposed to support me, said to me, "My sister-in-law is young and beautiful, and unlike you, she's had kids right away." I'm honestly jealous of my brother. Moreover, my mother-in-law accused me of being infertile because I was having an affair. She claimed she had caught me on a hidden camera as proof of my so-called infidelity. So I devised a plan and called a family gathering under the pretext of celebrating my nephew's birthday. I proposed we watch the evidence of my alleged affair that my mother-in-law was talking about. Upon viewing it, words like "I knew it" slipped out in despair for my sister-in-law and my father-in-law. My name is Mia. I'm 34 years old. I work in the international business division of a mid-sized trading company. I live with my husband Ken, who is the same age as me and works at a steel manufacturer, and my in-laws. We don't have any children yet. I met my husband at a dating event that a friend invited me to. By my 4th year on the job, I was finally getting the hang of it and starting to enjoy it. So I wasn't very interested in getting married, but I couldn't refuse my college friend who insisted, "You have to come." My main interest was solely focused on the special menus that each restaurant had prepared for the dating event. A case of a free meal is better than the songs of birds. I felt somewhat detached from my friend, who was actively mingling, but it turned out that she had become close to a man who was there with Ken. Ken wasn't too keen on the event either and had been reluctantly dragged along. Somehow, as bystanders, we ended up hanging out together. But since I intended it to be a one-time thing, I deliberately didn't exchange contact information with him. However, exactly 1 week after the dating event, on a Friday, I received a call from an unknown number on my phone. At first, I ignored it, but after work, I started receiving calls every 10 minutes. Who on earth is this? I was annoyed and about to block the number, but before I did that, I answered the phone to see who was making such a persistent call. Anyway, it turned out to be Ken, whom I met at the dating event. "Oh good, is this Mia?" he said outright. While I was relieved to find out who it was, I was unsure that I had given my number to Ken at that time. When I questioned Ken, he casually replied, "I got this number by begging a friend who was with me at the event." It seemed that my friend, who had hit it off with Ken's friend, decided to start dating him following the dating event. Meanwhile, Ken, having failed to get my contact information, heard about this from his friend and managed to get my number by pestering my friend. Although I was negatively surprised by my friend for casually sharing my number, and by Ken for taking advantage of that, we somehow started dating, and a year later he proposed to me. It wasn't exactly a whirlwind romance, but I thought I could live a peaceful life with Ken, who had a somewhat gentle and endearing personality. There were no issues from my side regarding the marriage. My parents had been living separately since I entered college. They hadn't divorced because they saw no particular benefit in doing so. At this point, friends and acquaintances would ask if I wasn't sad, but having been practically estranged from my own family, I saw their separation as an inevitable outcome. I was financially supported by my parents during my college years, so I visited their houses alternately during long vacations. However, since I started working, I have been using my busy work schedule as an excuse to solely report what's going on social networking sites. So when I informed my parents about my marriage, they said they would attend a ceremony if one was held. But when I told them it would just be a registration with no special ceremony, they later sent me a substantial sum of money as a wedding gift, which was more than enough for me. However, my in-laws, Sarah and Sean, seemed dissatisfied with my parents' handling of the marriage. To think they would settle their only daughter's marriage with money, how incredibly insensitive, they sneered. Indeed, it's quite concerning, they said with a bitter tone. But then my now husband Ken defended me, saying, money is certainly a sign of love. It's absurd for Mom, who has never worked, to say such a thing. Dad should know better given how hard earning money is. I felt truly happy for choosing him. Still laughing, I responded to his anger. Yes, it seems I wasn't the perfect wife. I had my earnings taken, was burdened with all household chores, and even though I said I didn't want children, I was berated for being infertile. I'm not strong enough to endure that. Still defiant, you should understand by now that once we're divorced, I'll have nothing to do with you. How about her as a new wife candidate? She's young, might be good for you. I signaled my lawyer, who, regaining composure, pulled out a photograph. It showed Ethan entering a hotel with a young woman. What is this? I took it, and entering the room was my former boss and Ethan's cousin, Ashley. Ethan was shocked and speechless at the sight of Ashley. Ashley sat next to me and handed me a handkerchief. Uncle, Aunt, I didn't introduce Ethan to Ariadne to make her unhappy, Ashley said. Ethan's parents were angry about this matter, so they will likely reprimand his parents. Seeing Ethan and his parents quiet down, I submitted the divorce application and documents related to compensation. Ethan seemed to want to say something but remained silent under Ashley's sharp gaze. Promptly signing the documents, by the way, this woman has a message for you. She wasn't aware that you were already married. She had already met with my parents and booked a wedding venue. Calling this a fraud, she is demanding compensation, so be prepared. What? That can't be true. Shocked by the decisive message, Ethan began to cry in despair. Ethan had been matching with young women on a dating site multiple times. The woman in the photo was one of them and deeply loved him. This revelation shocked his parents too. His father, surprised by the situation, was stunned. Ashley had investigated Ethan's infidelity, explained the situation to the woman, and introduced her to a lawyer. I never met the woman directly, but I was pained by her apology over the phone. Ariadne, divorce seems inevitable with irreconcilable differences, but about the house, shouldn't the mortgage payments be considered? His mother started. So I informed her that Ethan was now the owner of the house and that it was being sold because he failed the credit assessment. No way, his mother slumped in despair. We then left the restaurant. Within a month, Ashley informed me that Ethan and his parents had moved from the high-rise condo to an apartment due to his parents' spending habits. Ethan's salary alone couldn't sustain them, and they had even asked Ashley for rent assistance. The compensation for both the deceived woman on the dating site and myself was being covered by Ashley's parents. Surprisingly, Ashley had started dating Ethan's former lawyer. She was drawn to his decisiveness. "We never know what life will bring," she said, looking very happy. As for me, I started blogging about these events, which unexpectedly garnered attention, leading to new opportunities as a writer. Enjoying writing, I lead a busy yet fulfilling life. In fact, since the divorce, I've been strongly pursued by a corporate executive I knew through business, and recently, our relationship turned romantic. He's trustworthy and has suggested we live together, but I'm still pondering my response. In truth, my mind is already made up. I just need the courage to convey my decision. Looking forward to our date tomorrow. Today I'm again seated in front of my computer. Thank you for being with us and listening until the end. If you found it interesting, please subscribe, give us a like, and leave your comments. We'll see you on the Retaliation Realm channel.